Welcome to the RevOps Loop podcast with Maarten and Stjepan, brought to you by Digital Reach and the Nonprofit Tech Shop. Get ready to learn about revenue operations, HubSpot, and beer.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 17 already, the RevOps Loop podcast. So what are we talking about today? Today's topic, operational excellence for museums. Seems quite specific, but essentially we're going to be looking a bit more into revenue operations within the museum industry, what it looks like, what makes it complex, and what can we learn from it in general. And for that, we have a special guest today. We got Tiaan Loots in the call. So Tiaan, I'll let you introduce yourself briefly. And yeah, just curious, what is it that you do and what is your connections to museums in general?
Hey, Maarten, Stjepan, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm the head of solutions delivery and strategy at Digital Reach. How I'm in museums and nonprofits specifically is I've been in the HubSpot ecosystem this is my third year, and I've really grown with Digital Reach and with nonprofit tech shop that is one of our brands. It started in 2024. Both of you will obviously know that. And really, it sort of naturally, all the clients and stuff I worked with was more nonprofit based and a lot of complex stuff. So we started seeing that museums or nonprofits, and specifically museums and historical societies, are not the best when it comes to using using a sustainable or a single source of truth for their data, be that constituent data, CRM data, ticketing events, anything like that. So that's why we've taken the approach, and we use HubSpot as a backbone, but we integrate a lot of stuff for different systems and different museums. But that's where I come from in this industry.
Yeah.
So.
No, sounds good. And I think we'll chat a bit more about, I think what you alluded there at the end, right? The MuseumHub that you've been working on for the past, is it 2 years now at this point that we've been working on sort of this centralized MuseumHub product?
I would say about 2 years, yes.
Yeah.
So more depending.
I'm going to dig into that.
Start.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we'll dig into that a bit more, but maybe just, I guess, to lay the groundwork a little bit on, how the need for MuseumHub came about, right? So as you've been working with some of these museums more, I guess the first question there comes to mind is what makes working in the museum space from a RevOps perspective so hard? What makes it so difficult? And I think you have a lot of firsthand experience with that. But what is sort of the first or the biggest challenges that come to mind when you're tackling RevOps in a museum space?
I think what a lot of people don't realize about museums is museums have so many different departments and so many different aspects in them, right? So your everyday, if for a for-profit that would like a CRM, they would they use HubSpot for sales and for marketing, and maybe they have an integration with Shopify for something like that. Right? That might be a silly example. And they might have one or two teams. When you look at museums, and especially bigger museums, you might have at least 2 to 5 departments. With some of these museums, 15 departments. Some of the biggest institutions I work with is 15 departments, right? Now think about that.
Right.
Every single one of these departments want to find a way to reach out to people, and in the nonprofit world, we show constituents, right, rather than customers, and their journeys with all of their constituents are different than all of the departments. But then there's also one overwhelming arch that this is one historical study or this is one museum. Yeah. So to tie all of this together, right? They have the different priorities. Most of the time in today's nonprofit space and museum spaces, is they use outdated legacy systems that like to call themselves CRMs. I won't name drop anything. And on top of that, they use separate systems as well. So it's just silos everywhere. And whereas in one for-profit business or smaller non-profit business, you might have, 3 or 4 or 5 teams working, and now you have 15 teams working in different departments. Yeah. And you have one department working in 3 different systems as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And I wonder, Tiaan, I don't know if you agree with that, because obviously like siloed tech stacks. That's sort of a broader RevOps issue at times as well. In many companies, that's a thing. It seems to be more prevalent in museums, right? I would imagine in large part because of just there are so many constituent journeys, right? There is not just one path that a MuseumHub client, if you want to call it that, goes through, right? There's donors, fundraising, there's actual memberships, etc. I would imagine that that's the biggest driver, unless there's anything else that leads to that extremely siloed tech stack that we seem to be seeing time and time again, more in the museum space than in other spaces.
I agree with you. I think that's about like 80 to 90% of it.
Right.
Rather ironically, museums, you sit with a change management problem a lot of times, in that they get comfortable in these legacy systems. They work with systems from the 90s, from early, built on something like Unix, built on SQL databases where they need third, three or fourth, or they need super admins or they need specific administrators to do it for them. And it's complex stuff, so they know how to do X, Y, and Z. So that's also a big part of all of this. Resistance to change, even though you worked with a more complex system. And I don't know.
So would you say the need for having a like modern tech stack is because the end user, whoever is visiting museums, buying memberships, donating, they all use the new like payment systems, like it's seamless, and like the old systems probably don't talk to all of them, and it's very hard to change and get the whole data that you need, because like you mentioned, every department wants to build their own journey. Every department wants to have their own folks that are happy with what they're doing in the museums. So it's that like maybe one of the driving forces, like why the legacy systems are just like, we call them that, legacy in this day and age, like tying it probably later to AI and everything else that's coming, that the legacy system probably cannot take on more.
No, 100%. I mean, one of the most basic stuff when you look at HubSpot, right, is adding a tracking code on your website.
Right.
Legacy systems can't do that. So the whole world is online now, right? We're in a stage. Okay, yes, maybe a smaller museum will only have paper tickets when you go to them, but they for museums to survive, to get people to come to them, they are competing against all the other museums. They're competing against just your general activities on the weekend, whatever, right? So they need to sometimes take a different mentality as well, and you have to adapt, and you have to adopt certain new tools. You don't have to go top of the line. You don't have to do that, of course. For some people that won't make sense, but it's. I think, Stjepan, you've got the cherry like on top there, because that's like a perfect analogy in that it is highly like the non-profit industry cannot stay behind if everything else is moving forward in the digital age, and especially with something like AI now. I'm scared to talk about AEOs with some of my nonprofit clients, but it needs to happen sometime.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I know we've discussed this in like previous episodes as well. But the larger nonprofit space, that they're somewhat left behind when it comes to a lot of the more advanced tech in recent years. And I think what you mentioned earlier as well, right, is with museums particularly, there are some big systems out there, right, but that are just, even though they're big, they're a little bit behind the curve in terms of where they are technology wise, right, and then there's that level of comfort of, well, it's just a status quo. There's not a whole ton of competition, or at least from the outside, it seems that way. So there's, you have your couple of legacy systems that museums are plugged into. They're very limited in terms of what they can bring together, right? Bringing data together is not necessarily a priority for a lot of these systems. And because there's just not much else on the market, people just kind of stick to what they know. Yeah. Without, exactly, like you mentioned, without name dropping, we're not here to shame anybody, but it is a broader issue there. Yeah. What would you say, Tiaan, in terms of what that actually costs museums? It's hard to put actual numbers on this, right? But We know the
Yeah.
general impact it has, right? With tech stack's disconnected, so there's a lot of manual work to put things together. And to put it, I guess, in practical examples, right, is your point of sale systems. Do they have the information on the membership status of someone who comes through? Yes, no. Is that a manual thing that needs to be checked every single time? These are like the actions and the hours I would imagine add up. But I wonder if you have like a broader sense of the actual time and resources that this disconnection is costing museums.
Yeah. In terms of like tech cost itself, I can't give you exact numbers for
Sure,
systems,
yeah.
but I know of institutions using hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on one system tech stacks. This industry is dominated by 2 or 3 legacy systems, and the majority of nonprofits are on these 2 or 3 systems. The Smithsonian being one of them.
Yeah.
We can get into that in a second. What I would say about like the tech debt and the manual work. That also depends how big the department is, but or the big the institution is. But like, let's say, for instance, right, you don't have access. You. The simplest idea is, I don't know if someone visited this site multiple times, every single time it happens. Someone from a box officing department has to bring the membership, the attendance
Exactly,
information to people. That I've seen take adds an hour to an employee's day every day. I mean, it's hard to put a number on this, but like, if you multiply that with every single system, right? If you have you don't have a modern CRM. You don't have something that's where they gatekeep the API, where there's no integration, where you need an admin to download data. That takes the admin an hour. Then you can email it, whatever. Then it's going to take you an hour again to format it correctly, or probably 2 to 3 hours to format it correctly for the new system that you have. So it all adds up in that sense. And then you need to think about, like, let's say one of the biggest clients I've worked with, I think they had something like 12 or 13 different tools. Imagine that. If I want one central, if I need information, let's say I'm trying to run a campaign to get top donors or something like that, right? But I want information on their attendance for events, for the admission tickets that they have, and I want to see if what level of membership they might have, their past donations. I want to see if maybe they've done a private booking, they've done volunteering, anything like that. And then on top of that, I want to see how do they actually interact with my emails, my marketing emails, all of that. To do that's going to take me a week. It's going to take me a week to do all of that. And that's the problem. In a modern system, you don't need to do that. So you don't. So yeah.
And I guess that's...
You mentioned something that I truly believe that today, when you gatekeep an API, and like why? Like, okay, I understand a couple of processes where probably you want to gatekeep something or charge more, but seeing not just the systems we are talking about, but everything else, where you now have the MCPs and everything else, and like you are restricting and like probably double charging somebody to be on your system, and then if they want to change something and they want to push change, you are like locking them under like, oh, we charge an extra 10,000 just to have this unlocked, and then there's a fee for administration of that, and it doesn't do what we need to do, and we will not probably update in the last 2 or 3 years, and we don't know the roadmap of this tool. So when I see that, I'm immediately, why are you even on that tool? Because how do you plan for your next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ahead when everything is changing? And the data becomes the most important thing now. And you mentioned 15 tools to just see, okay, Maarten went to this event, he bought tickets, his wife also went here, are they a household, how they're together, can we send Maarten an SMS, is he like a senior citizen that doesn't use WhatsApp or whatever, and if we have him in WhatsApp, that's in another system. So that's what I'm thinking, because we also like created a couple of those journeys. Maarten and me with some other tools, and I'm like just being, I don't know, it's not angry, but it's like a feeling that it's not right. It's not right, especially when you want to get people to have the perfect experience when you're competing among so much of the same uh, industry and events. And like you mentioned, I think earlier, just like the weekend experience. And that ties down to the weekend experience. And sorry, Martin,
Yeah.
for cutting you in, but just wanted to like point that out.
No, you're good. You cut me off and called me a senior, but Stjepan, all good. I'll be the senior in your example. But I guess, and because it seems then the solution is kind of simple but complex, right? The simple thing is there needs to be a single record of, in this case, let's say Maarten the senior who doesn't use WhatsApp, right? That needs to be one single record across tools. So that seems to be the easy solution. Obviously, easier said than done. Tiaan, I know like with MuseumHub, that's one of the core components of it, right? That single constituent record. But what makes that so hard to come across? And I guess, do you have any insight as to like why that's been such a blocker for a lot of these legacy tools so far, to just, hey, bring everything together into single records? There's only one Tiaan, that should be one Tiaan and across all systems. Again, I'm sure it's easier said than done. But what are those biggest blockers?
That's a problem about the one Tiaan about in all systems. That Tiaan might have had signed up with 2 or 3 different email addresses, and I don't know how to identify him. And then 7 different Tiaans, and there might be, I mean, I guess in the broader scale, I have a unique name, but there might be 10 John Smiths, for instance. That's the most common name in the US, right? You should see some of these databases. I would type in John Smith and it'd be 400, 500. That's going to be very hard, right? But sorry, I'm going to get sidetracked in that instance. What I think I want to get back to what Stjepan said about gatekeeping and APIs, because it does tie in correct to this. You'd be surprised how that increases the complexity of everything, right? We're sitting with databases that might have been migrated from previous ones in the past as well. Some of these institutions have hundreds of years of data. Well, I don't know if I'd say hundreds of years, but have years and years and years of data. And you need to conform that to a specific one. You need to be able to combine 3 or 4 or 5 different systems into that. On top of that is because of gatekeeping APIs, making it very hard to look at API documentation, all that. It's not as simple as downloading an export and uploading it in there. You need to put a strategy and all of that together. So that's why the adoption and like getting to tools like this is pretty tough. When it comes to MuseumHub specifically, what MuseumHub does in that instance is it's built on HubSpot. I mean, you guys know HubSpot pretty well, and even if you end up churning off MuseumHub at the end of the day, HubSpot is very user friendly. That it's you're not going to be stuck for 10 years. I'm sounding dramatic, but you're not going to be stuck on that system, right? The most important thing is that backbone, and I'm able to customize HubSpot exactly to my will. So we built MuseumHub on top of HubSpot, where you use in HubSpot you have an asset called a custom object. You can essentially build any database in HubSpot. So what we then do is you get migrate systems like don't want to name names, but you migrate from old ticketing systems and you'd have your ticketing database. Then you'd connect that to the contact database that you have already, and conform 3 or 4 or 5 up until 10 different databases with different touch points, verticals or modules, or however you'd like to call that, within one system. And moving forward, you have that one view. Does that answer your question? I feel like I went in a bit of a tangent, but I think that answers.
No, I think that's I think that's spot on, right? And I think so. To bring it back to why is it so complex, right? In large part, it's because each of these systems originally built for their own functionality, whereas something like a MuseumHub, it starts from the CRM component, right? And then from there you build out what you're saying, like these custom objects. But again, you're building that on or linking that with existing contact company records, et cetera. And so I would imagine that's sort of the biggest difference here is that you're starting from a centralized point and then building out from there, as opposed to the other way around.
Just to add, I think like you're starting at the CRM level, but then based off like what the museum needs, you can build what they need. So you don't need to fit their model into a system that can only do one or two things. So if they have 5 things, you can build up 5 things there. And the word customization, I think it's very important because we touch based on the change management first. So like if you don't customize to somebody's, and we're talking seniors here, if you don't do it for seniors, like when they log and see what they need to see and do what they need to do, they probably never use that tool because they're so used to the old system that they were running for like 15 years. So I think you start with something that's one of the top in class CRMs, and then you build up what do you need. If you don't need it, maybe you just archive, everything stays there. If you need something else in the future, you just build on top of it and everything stays in one place. And probably you need 1 or 2 people that will be the admins, that will be the champions, that can then increase and build on top of that with the help of anybody that's running the product. But I think that's just an awesome idea how the product should be built. In my case, it's not like fitting everything in just one tool. We can talk about CRMs. Like you had some CRMs that were just doing one thing, marketing automations. And then there was an integration with this. And now we are untangling that 5 years, 10 years later, because they never talk to each other and the data is messy. So like I think that's the problem that this solves. Yeah.
Yeah. What I would say, mainly like is MuseumHub is a CRM driven ERP. So essentially, step one, I think you defined that already. Like it starts with the constituent and it starts with the CRM portion, and you build out on top of that. Important as well is like when it comes to something like HubSpot or a platform that you have over there. I think I just want to touch upon what you mentioned on like having the integration capabilities is super important. Like because MuseumHub is not for everyone. Salesforce is not for everyone. HubSpot is not even for everyone. But these systems are built in such a way where they are able to be integrated easily to other systems. The complexity is unfortunately in this space there are so many point solutions. So point platforms is a platform that is used just for one thing. So a booking tool, a volunteer management tool, something like that, that gatekeep their systems as well. Then it's very hard to convince people to get off to an old system and then upload it, and then move to HubSpot or move to something that integrates easier to HubSpot. But just the point being like what I'm saying is what makes it so nice HubSpot and what's important is having an integrated platform because in the system of gatekeeping that we have in the nonprofit community, it's so common. So
I guess to that. So when you do get past that gatekeeping, which again, from a technical perspective as just from a legacy comfort perspective, right? All right, we're moving everything through from siloed tech stack. We got our CRM based solution now. We know of some of the, I guess you would call them operational benefits, right? Where it's just, hey, less time spent on matching things together, et cetera. But there's also, and maybe we can focus on that a bit as well. How would you say that? Improvements in terms of the marketing you can do, right? The efficiency, the way you can now talk to your constituents better by having all that data together. So there are like some additional benefits to have. It's not just it saves you time and things become more efficient. It also opens up new doors. It unlocks new possibilities that weren't there. From my perspective, I look at it primarily from a marketing perspective. Like, I can set up a ton of new campaigns, but I wonder, like, what are the first things that come to your mind when it comes to what does this actually unlock for museums when they do have that centralized system?
100%. In my opinion, like the time element and time wasting and manual work is secondary in what this tries to do. Like you being a marketer, you're focusing on the marketing information. You get awesome information like Tiaan purchased 4 tickets at this side. He might have purchased tickets with children. So now I can market that he's probably can benefit of having like a household membership, right? But I think what we do when we like digitally transform, or when we migrate any big institution or small in that matter, is always look at advancement teams, excuse me, and development teams, because that is where the revenue lies in nonprofits and museums. It's about donations, about memberships. You know, ticket sales are nice, but ticket sales are stuff that you get on the weekend. You know, you it's a big portion of revenue. Don't get me wrong, and don't like fact check me on the numbers. I can't tell you that exactly, but having a solid constituency and having a monthly or annual income that you can rely on, 10, 15,000 members or whatever, how big your institution is super important. And then having moves management and working with these people to you know, looking at plan gifts, looking at any type of plans and steps that you can walk with them, that they can walk with your institution, is important, because that is the majority of museums get their money from funding. And what is unique in this instance is now I'm able to see a full background of my constituents, and I can see this person might want to become an executive membership. They might not know about this, and there might be certain benefits if they then donate us, you know, thousands of dollars. But like, I think that's the first point we'll put in. There's so many others, but like that's one of the first things.
I guess you're looking at the donors as donors, not just donations, I guess one way to put it, right? And so you have like their full background. 100%. Yeah. No, I love that. And I think I know we've worked on some of these marketing campaigns that we've been able to unlock as well, where there the focus is more on, hey, we combine household data with membership data with point of sale data to give us an idea of and not just where someone is interested in going, right? Let's say a museum has several locations, but clearly they have a preference for these two because they've gone there 3 times in the last 2 years, right? Their membership, they've increased it for year over year. Oh, but now this year it looks like they've decreased. Okay, it looks like we need to re-engage them. What are they interested in? We know they go to these 2 locations. Let's work that in there. So we have a nurture email that goes out. We set up some smart copy so that when we're talking to Tiaan and trying to get him to re-up his membership, we're highlighting the things that we know he's interested in, right? Because of the data we have. So I think, there's so many use cases there, but I think from a marketing perspective, that's where it opens up a ton of possibilities.
One thing, slightly off topic, that you just made me think about now is when one of my clients, the first thing when I go into the CRM is I see a Twix candy bar. So I can actually see that, Maarten might have liked a Twix candy bar and he bought it at this site. Obviously, you won't use that data, but that's how you can customize.
How detailed you can get.
I always love saying that story because I know exactly how much a Twix candy bar costs at this one store in my clients.
But that data can tell you something. It's a Twix candy bar, but let's say us 3 go to the museum and all of us 3 buy the Twix candy bar, so they know that the vending machine is placed correctly. If they're that's just where I will go. If you see maybe a school trip and there's every kid bought ice cream or maybe some additional things, it's okay, can we relocate it? Can we improve it? Can we add something else? And then I think we didn't talk about the supporting, we call it ticketing and supporting and everything. But I think that ties, we didn't talk about how MuseumHub solves that. So you mentioned there's a ton of departments, but what about if somebody wants to change a membership, how easy or how complex is to have that set up and help those departments when for example, I lost my membership card. Do I need to because what I'm seeing when I'm doing something, I need to email, then I need to fill something, that I'm waiting for an input to change. So that also probably is something that can be set up. Yeah.
100%. And depending on, so we customize MuseumHub for every single one of our clients. So depending on how you set it up, you will have every MuseumHub. Well, just firstly, you can always call in first because people in this space might be more technology averse. But the like consumers, customers, and that big portions of members still pay by check in cash in the mail, which is a foreign concept to me, and I'm sure for the two of you as well. But anyway, so with MuseumHub, like really, we in the back end we make it as easy as possible for a advancement like department to change a membership, to update a membership. HubSpot is very user friendly. You're able to manually override stuff, but also depending on the logic that you have, because I mean, some museums might not allow you to downgrade a membership in the middle of your subscription. Some museums might allow you to upgrade, and then you have to you're like, let's say upgrading today, then my new membership is starting today, and it's until a year from now. But for some cases, it might only be starting in the end of the month. I don't want to get too much in a tangent, but what I'm saying is like all these levels of customization is really according to the institution that we have, and we make it pretty easy. The example that you have about your card in MuseumHub, you can like click a button to download your card, to send someone can send you an email to your card, and we can easily customize a portal to say like, send me a direct mail for this card and connect that with something like Postalytics. Once we get that possibility to send direct card mail. So.
And you can do that because all those rules are again built into that centralized system, right? There's the same logic there would be if your organization runs on a automated membership system where depending on the amount of visits you get automatically updated. Same thing there. That's where point of sale entries, right? They feed into a centralized system. We've seen you've come 5 times in the year. That gives you a special membership discount. Blah blah blah. That's the kind of stuff that you can set up. And I think you mentioned it, Tiaan, right? Like MuseumHub, it's not a tool in that sense. It's not a software, right? It's a customizable. How would you describe it if you were to say it in one sentence? I'm putting you on the spot there, but
not putting me on the spot. I would say fully customized vertical solution built on top of a CRM right now. We are actively trying. Yeah. I think the important thing is vertical solution, right? Because in at Digital Reach or at Nonprofit, we like one of our verticals is museums. One of our verticals is advocacy. One of our verticals is like healthcare, right? MuseumHub specifically is a one-shop solution that is built for museums or for basically for museums or institutions and all that. You don't have to subscribe or have like everything in MuseumHub. If you only want ticketing, you can only do ticketing. If you only want membership, you can only do membership. Because it's not fully productized yet. We're working on that. But right now it's a solution built on top of HubSpot. So.
Yeah. Cool, Tiaan. I know we're short on time. I had one quick last one I wanted to just, I guess, get your input on is when you are working with museums and we're looking at setting up, in this case MuseumHub or any kind of tech really. I guess one question that we've gotten is who actually runs museums? Like, what does that decision making process look like? Is it different from normal organizations? Is it less difficult, more difficult? Based on the initial reaction there, it looks like it might be more difficult. But yeah, any kind of insights there?
There's a difference between who runs museums, who makes the actual decisions, and who would run a project and who would run a CRM, right? Because you might have your advancement department would probably be the person who would run would run a project like this or would want a platform like this. Yeah. But there's a board of directors, and that board of directors more often than not might have a state representative on there or a billionaire or something like that. And I don't want to get in a tangent over there, but a board of directors primarily. But on an operational level, you might have something else. They have there's internal business analysts in some museums. They have consultants who would help make this decision. So when it comes to this, that's also one more problem is who would lead this implementation and who would. That's why this stakeholder selection from a client, from a museum side, in any implementation, any digital transformation is super important, because without sounding too mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy in some museums and in some institutions, as there is in the for-profit as well. But I'm just saying, I think that's. I hope that answers your question. I can't tell you who actually runs a museum, because
it does. I mean, I think it's sort of what we expected, is that there's just that extra layer of complexity. Like I said, there's bureaucracy everywhere, right? And there's always going to be some decision-making groups that are harder or easier to deal with. But I think as a general rule, within for-profits, it's usually a bit more streamlined. There's a clear hierarchy, right? I know in our case, we're often working with the CMOs, the heads of marketing, heads of RevOps, right? Sometimes directly with C-level, sometimes right below it, but it's relatively clear. I think in these more layered organizations, things get a bit more complex, but yeah.
There's one more thing I want to add, and I think it's actually an important thing when I mentioned like state memberships. Like a lot of institutions in the US, like state historic sites and museums, like obviously like the Smithsonian and stuff, that's maybe a bit above where we are right now. They have so many like rules and regulations. Like if you're a for-profit, you decide whatever payment processor you want to use. In a non-profit with state funding, I can only use 2 or 3. I'm not allowed to look at the other. And it has to be compliant with this law and this law and this law. And, like I've read through some RFPs from some of these state-funded organizations. Yeah. That is just another level of complexity, which is like, next.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, that extra layer of red tape there as well. Indeed. Yeah. So a lot of obstacles in the space, right? And I think that's also a big reason as to why on your side, I would say on our side, but within Nonprofit Tech Shop, we put like a dedicated focus on it, right? Because that's just what it needs, right? Both in terms of decision making, the way tech needs to be unified is different than others. There's bigger legacy systems. But yeah, thanks a lot for shedding a lot of lights on that. I think it was good just to get some insights into, again, how does this work within museums? What can we learn from it? I think a lot of it comes down to it being more complex, there being more layers to it than people might originally expect. Before we go to our favorite part, which is I'll let Stjepan tee up, but Stjepan, any final questions on your side?
No, I think we covered everything. Like we can probably talk about this topic in like 3-4 more hours, or even more than that. But I think we for now have a lot. I know in the upcoming episodes we will maybe dive deeper into specifics on some of the parts. But I think we can go to our favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, Stjepan, you wanna tee us up?
Yeah. So. Probably know that, Tiaan, but like when we have a guest, we don't rate our favorite beers of the week or the last 2 weeks, but we ask our guests to rate their favorite beers. But if you're not a beer drinker, you can rate your any favorite beverage. So on top of mind, what's the favorite, maybe all-time favorite, and what's the favorite right now for you?
Just beer or beverage.
Whatever you pick. Like if you pick beer, then go with the beer. Yeah.
Surprisingly, you guys know me. You'd think my favorite drink is brandy and Coke. It's not. I'd prefer not to drink brandy and Coke, actually. I do like a Guinness if I'm looking commercial. If I'm looking craft beer, I used to work in a brewery, actually. As like my bachelor's degree, I would optimize the brewery, and they have this one beer called Car Park John, and there's a very cool story about this. It was like this guy working in a car park, but he would teach you how to surf in Klabecha, Port Elizabeth, where I'm originally from. I had this beer last weekend at the reunion, and it is like still one of my favorite beers, because I've also made this beer and optimized the beer and you can buy it in PE. And I should have thought about bringing some for you guys when I see you in AAM, and maybe I can still do that, but that is my favorite beer. It's called a Car Park John. Yeah,
that is a good one. It's a South African beer. Where's it from?
Yeah, South African beer. It is a amber ale, I believe. Man, I got a sticker over here somewhere, but yeah, it's a small craft brewery. That's like in the Eastern Cape or in Gqeberha or Port Elizabeth, and it's growing a lot. I can get it in there's a liquor store on the corner sometimes, but I think I think I have bought all their supply up because I haven't seen it there for months. So I assume you buy it for like 6 months or something, and then look, I got my favorite beer, I buy it all, assuming it's gonna
I
come
love
again
it.
and come again. So
So you
Okay,
contributed
Amber Ale.
to making it, and now you're also the key customer buying it all up. It's basically your beer by the sound of it.
It's
which is cool.
it's a flywheel. Yeah.
in this,
Love that.
Okay. You mentioned AAM. So before we close this one out, where can people find you after watching this episode? Where they can contact you and like anything regarding AAM you want to add to?
yeah, I've been my LinkedIn. That's probably the main social if you want to find me in a professional setting. Um, and then at AAM specifically, we will be demonstrating MuseumHub and HubSpot as well, but like all the verticals. We also like two new verticals that we like aren't openly advertising at the moment that we plan on like releasing and demoing for the first time at MuseumHub. So you can come to booth. I think 1311, something like that. I don't know, Martin. Do you
I think
remember
it's
the booth?
1313, I believe.
Oh, I was
I
close. I
think
was close.
is it not 1313? I thought so. If you're in the 13 section, you should be able to find us. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a double booth, a non-profit tech shop. I wore my shirt just for you guys. So
There we go. Love it. Love it.
yeah.
All right, guys. Then, we'll close the loop on this one. As always, reach out on LinkedIn. Any questions, topics, send them through. And Tiaan, thanks again for joining, talking us through what life in RevOps for Museum is like. Interesting to get your input.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week, guys. Talk to you all in the next one. Bye, guys.